Hey y'all. Alright, this is going to be an unusual video. I've talked a little bit lately about Bret Easton Ellis, and that I've enjoyed reading his work. I've enjoyed listening to him. I think he's an interesting writer, an interesting personality, and I'm inclined. I've been feeling inclined lately to pray for the man, to pray for Bret Easton Ellis, not because, well, I mean, we all need prayer. Let's face it. If you believe in prayer and what prayer entails, then we all need it. But I guess what I have to say is sort of, I want to just unwrap it or uncoil it here, and it's a little complicated what led me to this point of view. I think it started though. I've been listening to some of Ellis's podcasts, and he is, I talk about being a cinephile. I'm not a tenth of the cinephile that he is. This is a guy who really grew up, as he puts it, movie mad. That's the phrase that he uses. He and his friends were all movie mad. So he has this photographic memory of when, he saw a movie and where he saw it, who he went with, what he was wearing when he saw it. It's pretty funny. So yeah. Where do I start with this? I mean, I guess I've been, over the last few months, I've sort of been binge reading a lot of his fiction, to the point now where I've read all of his works except one. The only book of his that I haven't read is The Rules of Attraction. I don't know why I haven't read that one yet, but I've read all the rest. I fancy myself to be a writer myself, and I am a published author myself. Obviously, a relatively unknown one, not someone of the fame and stature of Bret Easton Ellis. But I feel that we tread some of the same ground in our work, and so there are certain commonalities there. There are some real differences as well. There are certain things about him that I do not find relatable at all. But there's a couple things that I heard recently on his podcast that have given me this conviction, that those who are believers, and I've got my own. I'm not the strongest of believers by any means, and I'm not usually the kind of guy who goes around saying, let's bring this man to Jesus. Not because I don't think that conversion is real and important, but just because it's just not my style. And I think there's something about, it's like, I haven't quite, I'm quite late in life, and I haven't figured it out yet. I haven't figured out the proper balance. I don't want to talk to somebody just like they're a project, and I don't want to think of somebody that way just because he's not a believer. I don't like the idea of just regarding him as somebody who, oh, you're getting so close. Oh, come on, you'll get there. Just ask the right questions. Come on. acting like I'm in some privileged position and the person that I'm thinking about is, I don't know, just fumbling around looking for the enlightenment that I have. I mean, because I'll be honest, a lot of the time I'm not even sure how enlightened I am. I'm not, my faith isn't it's something that I struggle with. I am a dedicated believer. I am a practicing Catholic. I take my faith seriously, but I could never call myself, or I shouldn't say never, because the goal is to get there, but I wouldn't call myself devout, because I don't give myself that kind of credit. I don't give my faith that kind of credit. And everybody's, hovering somewhere between faith and doubt. We're all on that continuum. So the first thing I heard, though, that really made me feel a kind of like a kind of something that just grabbed my heart for some reason. It was a really tiny little thing, and it's the fact that the other day when I was listening to his podcast, some podcast of his, he used the word treatise, but he pronounced it treatsy. He said treatsy instead of treatise. And this is something that happens to people sometimes who know a lot of words, who've read a lot and seen a lot of, who know the language well, but there are certain words that they've seen, and they know what the meaning of them is, but they haven't heard them spoken that much. Treatise is not really a word that you hear spoken out loud all that often. I don't even know why I know how treatise is pronounced. But I do. And so there was something just about, here's this guy who's so on the ball in so many ways, as far as his work goes. I mean, I'm not talking about his life, but as far as dedication to his talents and being someone who is a wordsmith and wields the English language successfully, who sold millions and millions of copies of various novels, but he got this word wrong. And that somehow made me feel not sorry for him, but it made me feel like, oh yeah, this guy's human. This is something that I know he would be embarrassed by if he found out. He would be mortified if he found out, I'm pretty sure. Because he's somebody who prides himself on knowing how words are pronounced. So that for some reason made him seem more vulnerable to me. And then I heard another podcast of his, and where in this one he's talking a lot about. This was from a few months ago, and he was talking a lot in this podcast about how he doesn't know why, but lately he's just been feeling gloomy. And he didn't call it depression. He said he was in some ways eager to try to distance himself from seeming like someone who was really I don't know, temperamentally was in a really bad condition. But on the other hand, he was talking about, not being able to get out of the house and meet with people, and just having this feeling of just gloom, darkness, and he doesn't use the word despair, but that's what it sounded like to me. And that he was just in this. He was in this. He had this. He was in this state of mind. Didn't know why. Couldn't identify the source of it. And the guy he had on was just who was talking to him about it, who was sort of psychoanalyzing him or whatever, playing the role of therapist, even though I think he's just a friend or just somebody that he knows. Wasn't really asking all that questions that were all that helpful. He was just sort of saying, well, you know what? It's Pride Month, and Bret Easton Ellis identifies as homosexual, as gay. So this guy was sort of jokingly encouraging him to just have a bunch of just sleep with a bunch of men for Pride Month. And Ellis, to his credit, said, "Are you serious?" He was incredulous about what the guy was saying, and then the guy kind of backed off and said, "No, I'm just kidding. I don't really mean that." But I mean, I don't know why he brought it up if he didn't actually mean it. But I mean, that seemed like what I was hearing was somebody who was struggling spiritually. He was talking about how, about death and about getting older and knowing that you're closer to death, and how that, in some way takes away the terror of death that you had when you were younger, and yet you still have this feeling of the finality of it that's hard to deal with. And he was talking in this vein for a good long while. And it sounded like it was sort of like saying, it was like, is that all there is? Is that all there is? Is that really all there is? Although he never actually said that. He wasn't actually questioning out loud his apparent atheism. Now, I say his apparent atheism because there's an interview with him from way back when, where he says he says he doesn't believe in God, and he grew up in a rich, very secular world where it doesn't seem like faith played any kind of role in anything. So I just, from that, even though he doesn't talk about religion very much, he's not avowedly atheist. From anything I've heard, he hasn't said, well, I'm an atheist. But he seems to be basically an atheist. And what I heard him expressing, during this being very candid about, what I heard him expressing was this feeling of a lack of meaning, of feeling there being a lack of meaning in the temporality of life, or the temporality, and the fact that life is not eternal, that it has a beginning and an end in his view, and once it's over, once you're dead, you just rot. and your consciousness vanishes. Again, he didn't say that directly, but that was very much implied in what he was, the things that he was asserting, and it seemed that he was saying he had a hard time dealing with that. He was having a hard time dealing with that. He was getting older, and I know he's somebody who, he's in what seems like a kind of tempestuous relationship with a younger man right now. And by the way, I like talking to somebody who's living a gay lifestyle and about conversion. When conversion must entail rejection of your lifestyle, the way that you've lived your life, at least as far as socially, sexually, when it comes to romance, when it comes to intimacy, all that stuff. It seemed that there was a time when he was more bisexual, but now he just sort of identifies as homosexual, even though he's very anti-woke. And that's another thing that I think is really interesting and also very admirable about him, because he's very outspokenly anti-woke, and has gone on at some length about how ridiculous liberals were acting during the first Trump era. And he even wrote a book about it called White, about how basically the close, his version of the closing of the American mind, that that liberals just spazzed out in great numbers and just couldn't see things in the proper perspective, couldn't deal with the fact that their candidate didn't win, that the other guy won, and so forth. So where am I going with this? So that was when it was, the first thing was the treatsy thing, which was, I just couldn't. That was sort of like oh man, I would hate for him to even find out that he made that mistake. but that was a little thing, and then just hearing how he was in this dark state of mind for no discernible reason. Of course, he had things that he was struggling with. He was struggling in his relationship, or his lover, who he talks about as being the millennial, and how he's in some drug rehab clinic or something like that. He was very open with all that, with a lot of the details, and he's also talked about his mother aging and other things that are going on with him, but most of all, it's just this oppressively dark mood that had overtaken him. And it's not surprising that he would be a man who endured dark moods. His fiction, while often funny, is quite often very dark, even for somebody like me. I think of myself as dark, but I have the consolation of faith, even though I'm not even though, as I've said, my faith isn't as strong as I would like it to be much of the time. So I think that I'm feeling this pull to pray for Bret Easton Ellis, not in this obnoxious kind of way. I know when some people say, "I'll pray for you," it comes across as obnoxious. Especially if it's like they don't like how you're living your life, or there's like, there can be like a passive aggressive kind of component to it, and I don't want it to be that way. I don't want it to sound like I'm that way about it, but I think I would like to see faith enter the life of Bret Easton Ellis. In one of his not more recent, but in my favorite book of his, Lunar Park, there are references to supernatural events, and maybe that was just him, writing in the, like he talks about, doing an old style sort of Stephen King-esque a book where involving these kinds of things. But it's a book where there is a man is stalked by demons and needs an exorcism, even though the exorcism doesn't come at the hands of a priest. There's this spiritual component to it, and in that book he's writing very intimately about his father and his troubled relationship with his father, who died when he was pretty young, and who he never got along with, and who was evidently not a great parent, not a great father, and he never felt much love from him while he was alive, because he wasn't the kind of son that this guy wanted, and so that's heartbreaking, and that's pretty sad, and I think it's not that easy to understand or relate to, or to identify with, feeling like you're not, like, as far as your mom or your dad goes, or both of them, maybe you're not quite what they bargained for. You're not quite what they wanted. But anyway, the book is about him reconciling with his father, although it's set in a fictional world with a fictional protagonist, and I discussed it in an earlier video. But it seems that in that book there's like an openness to a non-materialistic point of view or perspective. So that makes me wonder if he's thought about these kinds of things. So that's about it. If you've listened to all of this video, and if you feel inclined, maybe spare a prayer for Bret Easton Ellis, and not him. I'm not saying pray for him in exclusivity. There probably are people who need prayers. Well, we all need, as like I said, we all need them. There are some people who are in dire need of God's help. And I just felt that. I felt that when I was listening to that podcast recently. So that's where I'll end. I'll end this video. Thanks for sticking out all the way through, if you indeed did so, because this is an unusual video for me, and it's not really even a video because there's no visual component to it. But anyway, that's all.